It's so strange. I started writing Sandman in 1987. So watching things that have taken 36 years between conception and writing and what's happening now, it's unbelievable. But what's mostly unbelievable for me is how incredibly faithful it is, and listening to lines that I wrote over 3 decades ago. I started writing it 33, 34 years ago, and it was very much of its time as far as I was concerned. I wasn't trying to create something for the ages. I was trying to create something that was about what I was concerned with at that time. And yet it seems to have lasted so much better than I would have imagined. And it seems to speak to us sometimes from 33 years ago, and to have opinions on things that are very now. Sometimes the world takes a while to catch up with things. And I think there are definitely places where stuff that we were writing about, stuff I was writing about, and people were drawing 30-something years ago, I may not have got it exactly right, but I was definitely talking about the things that we're concerned with now. George has never let me forget that I owe Sandman to him.
Yes, it's not the greatest decision I made in my editing career, but when you pitched Sandman to me for my Wild Cards series, and I passed on it, and then you took it to DC, and here you are with what I think will be a television series and all of those comics and graphic novels and awards and maybe some alternate world or in some realm of dream. I accepted it, and you've by now published 10 stories of a Wild Cards character.
The weirdest thing for me is when Sandman was first published, the first issue came out in December 1988. It was a small cult thing that felt a bit ahead of its time. These days, it feels we didn't have to do a lot to it to quote-unquote bring it up to date. It's aged incredibly well. It's aged better than it honestly had any right to do. What's changed is not Sandman. What's changed is the fact that there is now an enormous audience waiting for it and ready for it, as opposed to a cult audience that it has to grow from a bean. I mean, Sandman starts out, nobody knew they wanted to read Sandman before Sandman came out. And then over the years, millions upon millions of copies of Sandman have been sold. The Netflix series, there's definitely the intention that we're going, okay, well, if I was creating Sandman now, would I have done that thing? Would I have written that? Probably not. Would this character have been that gender? Probably not. How would I have done that? I probably would have done that differently. So letting us do some of that stuff now and just enjoying ourselves. It's like, okay, here's the one where we're not going to change anything. We're going to adapt it, but we're going to keep it the same. And which allows us in Netflix, actually, Alan Heinberg and David Goyer and I will have conversations where I can actually say, okay. No, if you want to do that, now this is, we've done that in the Audible version, and this is how it works. But I think maybe we could actually take it over here, or maybe we could do this. And it's very liberating, actually. Having one that is the pure control then means that we sort of know where the doors are open in Netflix. The genesis of the project is 1992. When a young BBC producer, director, writer named Dirk Maggs did his adaptation of The Death of Superman for the radio in the UK. It was a huge hit, and he was asked what he wanted to do next. And he said, well, Sandman. And he got in touch with me. I loved the idea. We corresponded. And the BBC said absolutely not. And so that was where this began. The process of casting Morpheus didn't go anything like I thought it was going to go. Tom was in the first 10 auditions. You know, we got 10 auditions through from our Lucinda Sison, our wonderful casting director, went off and said, here you go, here's your first 10. And we looked at those first 10 and we went, oh, it's Tom. That's great. What I figured would then happen was very, very rapidly over the next month, Tom would be on a list and we'd have another 9 people on that list with Tom. And that list would go through to Warner's and Netflix, and then we'd all pick somebody off that list. I loved that Tom was there. Tom obviously was, you know, he was our candidate, but I thought it's not that quick. It's never that simple, and they're never in that first batch of people that you look at. I think I personally have now seen about 1,500 Morpheus auditions. I hesitate to imagine how many Lucinda Sison and her team must have watched before they ever came to me. We definitely got to the point of looking at maybe another 600 auditions and going, we still have a short list of Tom, when the pandemic hit. And as the pandemic hit, we actually basically did something that I've never heard of a company doing before or since, which is Warner just decided to turn to Tom and say, we think it's you. We would just like to pay you to not go and get another job. I definitely know that there are things that if I were doing them now, I would not do them like that. But then I also think you have to be allowed to make mistakes, because if you don't make mistakes, you don't do anything. He is unimaginably powerful. He controls your dreams. He controls your nightmares. He is ruler of the worlds that you go to when you close your eyes and you go somewhere else. He is Prince of Stories, in charge of our stories, and he's terrible at relationships. Tom Sturridge plays Morpheus, the King of Dreams, the Prince of Stories. Tom was in the first email we got from casting, and we went, oh my gosh, Tom is the best, Tom is magnificent. And then we saw 1,500, 2,000 Morpheuses, and there was no one who was Tom. He had gravity. He could actually make you believe that he was a billions of years old entity, somebody who existed in dreams, that he wasn't human.